SMEs and startups have always been, underserved, and especially when it comes to healthcare. Sorry to say, but the employees are being given a second-class citizen treatment out there, and that's where we said that, hey, what can we do? And that was the very starting point of Onsurity. So today we work with 8,000 organizations, starting with companies as small as 3 people to companies as big as 5,000 people also, in 90% of the cases. Discharge time, which is normally between 6 to 8 hours in the industry, we brought it down to about 89% of them happen in less than 1.5 hours. I think if you want to build ventures in the regulated spaces, you should not try to go with a mindset of saying, how will I disrupt it? Rather, understand the regulated space and scale and design along with the regulations.
What would be your one piece of advice for anybody that wants to build in the healthcare segment or the healthcare platform segment?
Build trust before you scale.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to PayU's Let's Talk Scale. This is a show where we feature some of India's companies that have really scaled to great heights. And today I have a company that I've admired for a very, very long time. The co-founder of Onsurity, we have Kulin Shah here. Kulin, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Swapnil. Thank you for having me on this show.
So, for the sake of the public, in very simple words, can you tell us what Onsurity really does?
So, Onsurity started off with a very simple thought process that whenever we in our careers, whenever we've been kind of building products, and I've especially built products for fintechs and technology or organizations, uh, SMEs and startups, right, or emerging businesses, like I would like to call it, have always been underserved, right? They have been businesses which have not been kind of catered to with any kind of a solution, and especially when it comes to healthcare. Sorry to say, but the employees are being given a second-class citizen treatment out there, and that's where we said that, hey, what can we do for these employees, especially when it comes to their health benefits? And that was the very starting point of Onsurity, where we said, let us create a health benefit stack for employees, right, which goes beyond just insurance, right? We want to kind of create something that is useful, that is something that is can be used every day, and something that an SME would want to give. And at the end of the day, for an SME, right, they just don't want a tick mark benefit. They cannot afford a tick mark benefit. They want an ROI. And that is where the whole thought process of Onsurity came up.
Simplify it further for me, right? In terms of if I'm an SME, and of course I know that you cater to larger businesses as well, but if you're going to the CEO of that company, what do you tell him in the most simplest terms as to why should he sign up for your product versus anybody else's?
The simplest thing to kind of tell a CEO is, right, what is the CEO wanting today? A business owner, right? Business owners want to get the best talent because they also aspire to become large organizations. And large organizations can only be built when you have the right processes, the right talent. To get the right talent in India today, you're dipping into the same pool. Let me give you an example. I'm running an ITS company, or I'm running a media agency, or I'm running a boutique consulting company. Where does my talent come from? The talent comes from the same talent pool that your big fours are hiring from, where your large ad agencies are hiring from where large ITS companies are hiring from. You are kind of fighting for that same talent. You can pay salaries, but can you replicate their benefit structure?
Yeah.
And that is what we kind of tell business owners, that if you want to bring the right talent on board, you'll need to have the right benefit structure. A structure that does not create burden on you, but still delivers enterprise grade kind of a quality. And that's how we talk about Onsurity as India's only SMB focused, employee health benefits platform, providing employee health benefits on a monthly subscription basis, which includes not only insurance but also includes healthcare and employee well-being as as a product.
So, from what I read here, today you'll cover close to 1.5 million employees across more than 8,000 SMEs and startups in India. That's quite a scale that you guys have achieved in a very short period of time. But targeting SMEs is not something which is like an everyday idea. So just tell me, where did that come from?
Sure. So, Yogesh, my other co-founder, and I started Onsurity in 2020. And right before that, Yogesh was running a consulting company, and Yogesh also comes from the insurance space. He wanted to give benefits to his employees, and when he went back to the fraternity and said, "I want to give employee health benefits," the fraternity told him, you are from the industry, we don't do anything for SMEs, right? It's just difficult to do something for the SMEs. And that's the time we realized that, hey, there's a huge gap in this kind of a, market or this segment of businesses where businesses want to provide employee health benefits, but they are just not able to get the right product because they are lost in either complex products, very high pricing, or products which are created for large organizations. And that's why we decided that if we were to create an SMB value proposition, we had to build it from scratch. And that's how we've been taking a SMB first approach. There was no one who was trying to, you know, uh, uh, cater to this particular segment, right? So product was not available. Pricing was a hindrance because, India has been an annual premium kind of a market, right? SMBs don't want to, let go of their working capital, right? If given a choice where to deploy working capital, they want to put it in the core business, right? And third, they don't have large HR teams. An organization which has 2,000, 3,000 employees, they have an insurance desk because they also understand that whenever, a claim comes in, they will have to put in their efforts. And SMB cannot do it. They want something that is smooth, right? That is seamless, something that has been taken care of. They don't need people intervention. They just need problems to be solved, right? And that's how we said that if we build a digital stack which takes care of all of these problem statements, providing the right access, providing a seamless onboarding journey, providing a smooth claims facilitation, and most importantly, a DIY solution completely tech oriented where they just do not have to talk to a human being unless until required, right? I think that's what SMBs want today.
Okay. So, was there a certain moment that you realized that you had product market fit, or do you still think that's an evolving journey when it comes to your company?
Okay, I have a contrarian view on that. I think no startup has a product market fit. Why? Because the product that you were selling yesterday has to evolve today. The customers whom you were selling to yesterday have also evolved today, right? So it's always going to be a product market fit is always going to continue to happen, right? But yes, there is a inflection point when you start realizing that you have built a product that is valuable for someone, right? And it has a fitment for a particular segment. And that we realized when we crossed close to about 1,500 businesses. And the first, I think, for the first 12 to 18 months, and 80% of them was first time buyers of employee health benefits. These are organizations as small as 3 people, right? To organizations as big as 300, 400 people who just didn't want to venture into providing employee health benefits, not because the lack of intent. It was basically not knowing what is the starting point, right? Am I getting the right product? What is the right product, right?
What have been your two or three biggest challenges as you scaled up the company, right?
Yeah, I think, when we started off as an organization, we, we obviously aim to democratize employee health stack, and that continues to be, our vision today also, that how do we democratize health benefits for small and medium businesses. But most importantly, I think the challenges that we faced is that when we started off, right, we just wanted to provide access, right? But we had to evolve with our customers and their life cycle. Like I said, we had to ensure that we create a sustainable program. We had to ensure that we, do not, provide a continuous hike in prices, right? We do not create a slowdown in terms of, just because the numbers have increased, our quality of service drops, right? Because the most easiest thing to do, when you're in your 0 to 1 journey, is you'll go out of your way with heroics, manual heroics, and say, I've delivered a great experience. But when you scale, right, those manual heroics have to become processes, right? We started creating extremely user friendly flows on our mobile app, where a person can just kind of, press the press of a button, will receive a call back, right? In fact, even for things like reimbursement, we are the only company in the country, right, which has completely done away with any kind of a paperwork. In fact, we don't even take cancelled checks, right? So these kind of small, initiative and nuances that we started building in our product has actually helped us to scale and ensure that we didn't have to scale the organization from a people perspective just to kind of handle scale. We always focused on digitization. Today, because of these kind of automations and these kinds of API integrations, we've been able to bring down our admission times, where our average admission time in the hospital, which we facilitate, is less than 1 hour in 90% of the cases. Discharge time, which is normally between 6 to 8 hours in the industry, we brought it down to about 89% of them happen in less than 1.5 hours. Our reimbursement, because of the kind of journeys that we have created, the time to complete a reimbursement for an employee is close to about 15 to 20 days. We have reduced that to 5 days, and the payment happens in the next 5 days. That means in the first 10 days itself, you get your reimbursements done.
Tell me the best part about working with SMEs and tell me the toughest part about working with SMEs. Tell me both.
I think the best part about working with SMEs that I've realized, and again, a contrarian view, SMEs are price sensitive, but they have a very high appreciation for the kind of work that you do. And I think it is enjoyable to work with SMBs because, one, they actually have a lot of more skin in the game in your product along with you, right? Because they like a product, they want to give you a chance. So even, and I'm not saying that products don't fail, right? Experiences don't get disrupted, right? Onsurity has its own fair share, and I'm okay to say that, because we are a B2B business at the end of the day. We are a function of our processes and people, right? But the SMEs also know that you are one of them. They cut a lot of slack, right? I wouldn't say that much about my.
Got it. So that's the best. And even what's the toughest part? Is there anything tough which is there about working with?
I think I wouldn't say there's a tough part about working with SMEs, but I think ensuring that you have predictability, right? Ensuring that you are problem solving for them, and ensuring that you're making the product and keeping the product relevant for them, right, is a bare necessity for them, right? And hence, like said earlier, processes really help us to kind of keep kind of renewing our contracts with our SMBs, right? Our logo retention is close to about 80% today, year on year. So I think the toughest part is actually creating that trust and keeping that trust with the SME. SME is all about trust.
Trust. What role has payments played in driving adoption and retention at your company?
In fact, for us, payments is actually one of the biggest, product features and the most important product features. Like I said, we are the only partner in India which provides monthly subscription, right? If you look at it, one, we are the largest in our space today with more than 8,000 organizations. And now these 8,000 organizations are all paying me on a monthly basis. Not only that, because we've been able to provide employees on an individual basis on our mobile app, an ability to take products for their parents, a product for their in-laws, siblings, spouse and children if they are not already covered, right? All of this adds to, and all of these are again on a monthly basis, right? That means I'm generating a huge number of bills every month from a collections perspective. I'm not an annual transacting platform today. I'm a monthly transacting platform today. And hence, my payments have to be extremely, extremely good. And that's where, we've been kind of, working with Payu, right? And that's where we kind of see the difference, right? One, that we have been able to kind of give multiple payment options to our SMBs today, right from an UPI to standing instructions, credit card, debit card, net banking. In fact, to the extent that we've been able to also create a complete virtual account network kind of a product also for our SMBs. And our payments are the most important thing. I'll tell you another reason why. Because in our business, right, because we also have insurance as one of our core offerings, insurance cannot be given to anyone before they make the payment, which means the very continuity of anyone's benefits also depends on receiving the payments on time. And that's where payments it plays one of the most important role in our business today.
Got it. Give us some insight, because you'd have, especially since you're dealing with so many SMEs and on a monthly basis, do you see them preferring one mode of payment versus the other?
Every SME, depending on their size of business and the size of billing with us, will have a different mode of payment, right? Let me start with an example. A company which is less than 50 employees, right, just wants to make a payment through a UPI, because these are business owners. Not necessarily they're making payments from their current account. They might just be making it from their personal account also, because there's a very thin line that gets blurred out there, right? um, Organizations which are in the mid market, right? They want to make payments through credit cards or debit cards, right? So that's where they kind of come into so they need all the kind of payment options. There are businesses. So we work with a lot with GCCs also in India, because again, for us, they are a small business. While they might have large, organizations in their home country, but out here, they are organizations which have 50 employees or 20 employees. They just want to give us standing instructions. They don't want to do, oh, every month a bill will come, I'll check the bill. They said, no, I know how your system works. I just want it to be like an auto, payment. So we have to offer all of these things seamlessly with high success rates, because every time that a failure happens, that means there is a necessity for a touch point to be triggered in which a manual intervention would be required. And hence for us, payments is extremely, extremely important.
You are operating, Kulin, in a regulated space. And India needs a lot of founders to come in spaces like this and make a big difference. What would be your two or three pieces of advice to founders that want to build ventures in regulated spaces?
I think if you want to build ventures in the regulated spaces, right, you should not try to go with a mindset of saying, how will I disrupt it? Rather, understand the regulated space and scale and design along with the regulations, right? That is one of the biggest advice that I can give founders.
Can you give me an example of that?
For example, insurance, right? We are regulated by our, regulator IRDA, right? There are very clear instructions, right? For example, you cannot provide, insurance to someone who does not pay upfront, right? Don't try to run models where you're doing some kind of a financing of the balance sheet, right, and saying, oh, you know what, I'm going to now do a hack out here, right? You're in a regulated product, something that is not covered, right? You try to kind of cover it through some different mechanics, right? So I think all of those things should not be treated as disruptions. I think they should be kind of still, put into a place where you're saying, these are the, guardrails, and I won't follow these guardrails, right? I think following the guardrails has always helped businesses, because then there is no business interruption, right?
Tell me a heartening story, because health insurance is a very personal thing for people and it's life changing almost, right? And you all only realize the nature of that when you have a situation at home. So tell me a heartening story that made you feel really good to be in this particular business.
Ah, there are a lot of stories that come across our way, but there's one particular one where you know um, there was a talent that was with a startup, and the person didn't have good habits. Reached the hospital, was given you know was given a mandate that you need to go through a heart surgery, right? And this was happening on a Sunday. The family had no idea about what's happening, right? They were in a time of distress because the surgery had to happen the next 1 hour, right? And like any other Indian family, right? Getting the money in place at the right time, reaching, and they were migrants in Bangalore, right? New migrants in Bangalore. They didn't know whom to reach out to, right? That's when the family saw that, got to know from some colleagues that, oh, there's Onsurity that is available out there. And because of our entire tech stack, it was very easy for them to reach out to us, right? It was very easy for us to kind of ensure that we got all their documentations in place, right? Zero manual intervention, but within an hour's time, they had got all the approvals, right? We ensured that you know uh, financial products should not stop healthcare, right? And that's how we kind of help the family end to end, right, at that point of time. And because of the kind of product structures that we had created, the bills were actually more than what the insurance could cover. But because we had designed the product in such a way for the organization, right, there's something known as a corporate buffer, right? We are able to kind of even exhaust that, right, to ensure that the family got maximum amount of help. And we then later realized that while it was a startup employee, they had a lot of loans on their head. If we had not been out there, um, they would have to take one more loan, and that could have just put them in a very poor debts kind of a cycle out there.
Very nice. Very good to hear this. Final question. What would be your one piece of advice for anybody that wants to build in the healthcare segment or the healthcare platform segment? What would be your one piece of advice for them?
Build trust before you scale, right? Uh, Healthcare and financial products all work on trust, right? Because people are giving the most important aspect of their life in your hands, which is the health of the person, right? If you're not able to build trust, right? And trust happens through multiple ways: the right product, the right pricing, the right experience, the right way to ability to consume it, right? The right way to kind of ensure that you have access to it, right? Only when you are able to do all of these things, then think about your next journey of scale. Till you don't build that trust, till you don't build those layers of delivery, please do not scale, because it just comes to bite you back.
Amazing. Kulin, you're an extremely insightful entrepreneur. You've been an entrepreneur for a really long time, worked in the startup space for a really long time. You've built this business along with your team based on real core insight that you got of the Indian market. The service that you're providing is an extremely important one for India because all of us know that we're an underinsured country in some way. So I hope that you go from these 1.5 million users to 10 million users in a very, very short time. And probably before the next time I meet you, I hope those numbers are up to 10 million people, because that's what India needs. And thank you very much for coming on this show. Thank you very much for sharing your insights on how to scale companies on PayU's Let's Talk Scale.
Thank you so much, Sapna. Thank you so much for having me.